Good evening. I would like to welcome people to the Tuesday, February 17th meeting of the Monmouth City Council and ask our city recorder to call the roll, please.
Councillor Belts is excused. Councillor Carey.
Here.
Councillor Lopez.
Present.
Councillor McKeel. Here. Councillor Oberst.
Here.
Councillor Ridgway.
Here.
Mayor Coons.
I'm present. And Councillor Carey, would you lead us in the flag salute this evening? Stand if you're able to join us. All right, thank you. We'll conduct a couple of items of business this evening before we get to our hearings. So we start off with our consent calendar that includes the minutes of the council meeting of February 3rd. Those minutes were in our packet, and I would entertain any corrections, additions, or a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Thank you, Councillor Oberst, for the motion and Councillor Lopez for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. At this time, we do plan to have our public hearing on our legislative amendment coming up. But first, we do offer an opportunity for public comments for any item not on our current agenda. So I'm going to ask if we had anything submitted for public comment this evening.
There is one, Mayor Coons, that has a comment for public comment time and for the agenda item.
Right, so nothing for non-agenda. All right, we will make sure we get folks in.
One for the agenda and one that's not on the agenda.
Oh, okay, one non-agenda item. Did I get that card?
It's all on one card. Mr. Pastor.
No.
Right, we'll ask you to identify yourself, the street of residence, and yeah.
Yes, I am David Pastor. I live at 11100 Mistletoe Road and just outside the city limits of Monmouth.
And you have an item not on the agenda? Oh, okay.
There we go. Yes, I do. There's two items, and I'm glad to hear as I came in. The sound system was a concern when I went to the City Planning Commission. And so I was going to ask about that, but I hear you're already evaluating, which is great. I appreciate that. The second item I wanted to address was the conduct of the meetings. I looked carefully through both guidelines you had to see how we coordinated our contributions in this meeting and the Planning Commission meeting. And there weren't really any coordination. Maybe I missed a 3-minute restriction. And so I would like to have that put on the agenda if possible in the near future. 3 minutes is very brief to discuss an item. I did notice that council members can yield time to other councilor members if they feel that they're not as informed or able to comment on it. That would be one element that would be wonderful to give to citizens if they could have that in writing to yield to one or two people the 3 minutes that are allotted, then they could spend a little more time. I believe that that's the main concern that I have, that we evaluate the contributions. I did ask, there's land use hearing guidelines too, and I asked specifically for those. Pam at the front desk was very gracious. She said they're being revised. I asked her, can I have the old copy? This was Thursday of this last week. And she said, no, we're just going to revise them and we'll get them out very soon. So there is no specific guidelines. The city council guidelines were much more open and did not seem to have a time limit at all in there. But in this meeting, we're limited to 3. So if that could be on a future agenda, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. All right. That does lead us to our regular agenda items. And our first item this evening, yeah, thanks. Catching that, if you use the microphone, please go ahead and you turn it on and then turn it off when you're finished. So if folks have questions. So that will bring us to our public hearing. Before I officially open the hearing, I would like to go ahead and mention a couple of housekeeping things. If you are in the audience, and I appreciate that a few of you are able to get our hearing loop system, you will notice that you do pick up not only our microphones, but we do have these overhead microphones. So for the folks wearing the hearing loop and anybody who happens to be online, if we're having side conversations in the seated area, those will be picked up on the microphones, and it will be a little bit difficult for folks who are trying to hear the proceedings. So we're going to ask that if you want to have a side conversation, if you could step outside to do that, please. If we see too much of that going on, we may pause and ask folks to consider that these large microphones overhead will be picking up any conversations going on in the room. Tonight, I've received some public comment cards just to let you know. We will prioritize hearing from people who have not previously submitted testimony. So if we have gotten written testimony either at the Planning Commission or that has been sent through city staff, then Sure. Yeah, hopefully we don't get feedback on you because that would be rough. So we're going to prioritize first from folks who have not yet had a chance to submit written and oral testimony to us, and then we'll call up those who have submitted testimony but like to offer additional testimony. I'm going to let you know that as this evening, the council does not intend to make a decision. We understand this issue is complicated, and it's a very big decision for the future of our community. We want to hear from you. We have been able to get and receive testimony. Some of that we just got today, and since we're all volunteers who have some of us full-time jobs, we want to make sure we have time to read and consider everything. If you have written testimony with you tonight, we're going to ask that you give that to our city recorder, Phyllis Bowman. They will make sure that that is included. But we are going to leave the public record open for the next 7 days. So if you hear discussion tonight, if you have additional thoughts, please feel free to submit written testimony only, but before next Tuesday, February 24th at 5 p.m. Anything in that amount of time will become part of the full public record of this hearing and give all of us an opportunity to really review that before the council makes a decision on this important issue. Okay. So with that, I am going to go ahead and I think like I said, hopefully you can all hear. If you're having some difficulty, then coming forward might help, but hopefully you can hear with the hearing loop. All right, at this time, I am going to ask our city attorney, Justin Thorpe, to read the legislative hearing script to let you know what to expect this evening.
Thank you. This evening, we have a public hearing on legislative amendment 25-02 to amend the Monmouth Comprehensive Plan map designations for property included in an urban growth boundary land exchange. The city council will receive testimony and at the close of the public hearing, make a decision on whether or not to adopt the proposed amendments. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and the state of Oregon. The comprehensive plan map amendment is a type 4 legislative procedure under our city code. For anyone wishing to speak, we ask that you please use the speaker cards that are provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the mayor and you must state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any member of the city council wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter, or any ex parte contact made with any person interested in the request being heard?
Councillor Carey?
In my role as council liaison to the Planning Commission, I've been either virtually online or I've been in the room for those Planning Commission hearings. And I'm doing that primarily to make sure that the process works fine.
Okay, and do you think that will affect your ability to make a good decision?
No, I don't. I've had a little bit of a jump start on some of this stuff, so I've got a little deeper knowledge perhaps as a result of it, but it won't influence one way or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McKeel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was approached by a relative of an individual who's involved with this district of the land, and so I just wanted to report that out.
Okay, and do you think that will impact your ability to issue a good decision in this matter?
No.
Anyone else? All right. Councillor Oberson?
Had a brief conversation with Mr. Sparks after the last council meeting, but again, I don't think it impacts my ability to make a decision. Well, I've got the mic. I think I can use my hearing aids successfully. If anybody's desperate for a pair of headphones, here they are. Anybody need them? Okay.
All right.
Okay, I will now open the public hearing for legislative amendment 25-02, amendments to the Monmouth Comprehensive Plan map.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask Suzanne Duffner and David Carr, our Community and Economic Development Director and City Engineer, to give the staff report. And just to let you all know, after the staff report, council will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff. And after that, then we will open to public comment. I'll be calling up the folks who've submitted public comment cards only.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. I have a PowerPoint presentation that I can project on the screen. Okay, thank you, Phyllis. All right, so this is a public hearing involving legislative amendment 25-02 that also includes properties considered as part of a UGB land exchange. The proposal includes two portions of it. The one is the urban growth boundary land exchange that's been authorized by HB 2647. And that is to remove 90 acres from the existing Monmouth urban growth boundary that's pictured here on this map in orange highlighted parcels. They're located in the southwest corner of the Monmouth UGB, and replace that actually with fewer acres, 75 acres, so making the UGB slightly smaller. And those are the areas planned for inclusion, and the UGB are noted in yellow highlight. The area 1 is referred to as is located on the northwest side of the Monmouth UGB off Mistletoe Road, and the area 2 is off Talmadge Road. It's a smaller parcel in the southeast corner. So the proposed plan map designations for the areas to be added in yellow include medium density residential, and that's for the portion of area 1 off of Mistletoe Road. And then that comprehensive plan map designation allows for a variety of housing types, including detached, single dwellings, duplexes, townhomes, and triplex, fourplexes, and cottage cluster uses. The other area to the proposed plan map designation is for low density residential. The procedures for these two actions are spelled out from two different sets of criteria for the UGB land exchange. There are specific criteria laid out in House Bill 2647 that involve siting criteria and also draw upon an earlier House bill or Senate bill, 1537 that was passed in 2024. This land exchange process requires county review and approval and also review by the State Department of Land Conservation and Development. The portion that involves placing the comprehensive plan map designations on the two sites proposed to include in the UGB as a legislative decision process. It's defined as a type 4 action by the city's code. And that process includes two public hearings, the first of which we've already held at the Planning Commission on January 21st and February 4th. Planning Commission's role was to make a recommendation that's been forwarded to you. And then the City Council is also required to have a public hearing, and the City Council makes the final decision on these type 4 decisions. So just to give some context to the land development process, we're at the very beginning, early stages of a very long and sometimes complicated review process. So there's this first UGB amendment, comprehensive plan map amendment stage that's shown in yellow with the yellow arrow. That's followed by another series of reviews before any development can occur on properties that would be exchanged into the UGB. So they have to go through an annexation process where they're actually brought inside the city. City zoning is then placed on that property. This is also a type 4 review. So as you recall, 2 public hearings, notice to adjacent property owners in the newspaper, various sources of notice. And then after that process, there's a subdivision review process. We call that a type 2, and that also includes notification to surrounding properties and an opportunity to comment on that. That's the time when infrastructure starts to get constructed, the streets, utilities. And then the final step is actually a building permit review process for the individual dwellings that show that they meet all of the city applicable codes. So this is not the final step. There will be a lot more information once we know a detailed development proposal. None of the procedures for the map amendment, the annexation, the subdivision, building permit, none of those have been expedited. Those all have to follow our city codes and provide the information such as a traffic impact analysis study. We're just not at those steps yet because we don't have specific development plans to be able to evaluate that. So I just want to give a little bit of context because a number of the concerns, often it's very common for them to jump to specific impacts of development, and that's not ripe yet for consideration. So why is Monmouth proposing a UGB land swap? This has been an issue that's kind of been plaguing the city, at least for the 9 years that I have worked here, and I've heard from others that it's been going on longer than that. We have a very limited residential land supply. There are large portions of our urban growth boundary that have not been annexed, have not been able to develop, or have environmental constraints on them. The typical process for development is for the lands inside of the growth boundary to annex and be developed over time to meet the city's 20-year housing needs. Unfortunately, we have a number of large land holdings inside the UGB where the landowners have not agreed to annex their properties. So it has artificially constrained that land supply. That coupled with the environmental constraints and challenges associated with building near creeks has really put a lot of constraints on our land supply and what would normally under the state land use system be able to develop and grow, allow the city to grow. The result of this artificially constrained land supply is that at any given time, we usually have a dozen or fewer serviceable lots available for development. That's a very small supply of lots to be able to build new housing on. This is reflected in our last year of building permits for the city. We issued 6 building permits for single dwellings in 2025. And based on our 20-year forecast for our housing needs, we're supposed to be hitting 44 dwellings per year. And the last 5 years, we have not hit that. So you can see that we're falling very short from what we're projected that we need for housing. And all the while, you see housing costs have continued to rise. The average home sales price, somewhere in the neighborhood of $465,000, is unattainable to many people that live here. And the rent costs have also continued to grow up. Sorry, going backwards here. So the carefully constructed solution that we've been studying over the last at least 5 years by doing our housing needs analysis, we've completed a 20-year analysis of what our residential land needs are and the number and types of housing units that are needed. We followed that up with a housing production strategy to understand what are kind of the levers and buttons that the city can push to move the needle on helping housing actually go into production and be built. And one of the high priority strategies that was identified in that housing production strategy is to complete a UGB adjustment, or also commonly known as land swaps, to help spur development on properties where we have willing landowners that aren't constrained by all the environmental resource issues. The state legislature created a pathway to help streamline the time-consuming and costly UGB land swap process as one of the ways to address statewide housing shortages through Senate Bill 1537. We kind of thought that by way that this was going to solve our issues or problems with being able to do an expedited land swap. However, as we reviewed that bill, Monmouth was not eligible since we're a community that's completely surrounded by exclusive farm use land, and those cities were excluded. We were able to, subsequent to the passage of Senate Bill 1537, create a House bill that would address our particular problems and issue that we have, recognizing how critical Monmouth's residential land shortage is. This House Bill 2647 made it possible for Monmouth to apply for the expedited UGB swap process, but it was limited to a very specific amount of land and also specific sites that would facilitate properties that could develop quickly and without a lot of barriers to those. So again, the House bill allowed Monmouth to remove 90 acres and add 75 net acres of land that had to meet certain criteria. They need to be designated for residential use, contiguous with the city limits, not more of 25% of the acreage in a mapped flood or wetland area. The owners must consent to the annexation and the land swap, and the properties must be able to connect to city water and sewer services to facilitate development. The land being removed, the 90 acres, in contrast, had to have 25% or more of it in a mapped flood and wetland area and not already be annexed or on city sewer services. So as part of this analysis, staff looked very carefully around the whole urban growth boundary. We are a city built between 2 creeks, so we have a lot of constraints from both the Middle and North Fork to the north, and then also South Fork Creek. And that's further constrained by the City of Independence on our east side that forms our eastern border. And so as we looked around the UGB, there really were only just a couple of sites that met those criteria for being shovel ready for land development. The first area that we're including in the proposal, Area 1, is in the 10,700 block of Mistletoe Road. It's approximately 70 net acres in size. 1% of the property is environmentally constrained. It's contiguous with the UGB and the city limits. There's water and sewer stubbed to the property. The property owners have agreed to consent to annex, and the proposed, again, plan map designation is medium density residential. And this zone allows for housing to be built at a range of 7 to 16 units per acre. As we look at how many housing units could potentially be built on there with that density, and taking into consideration infrastructure needs, we generally, as a rule of thumb, say 25% of the property is dedicated to infrastructure. That's somewhere between 368 to 840 units that would potentially be built over time. The land added to area is, the land also under consideration is located on Talmadge Road, 6685 Talmadge Road. It's approximately 5 net acres in size. 23% of the property is in environmental constraints that's associated with the South Fork Ash Creek to the south. It is contiguous with the UGB and city limits, and water and sewer are stubbed to the property in Ash Creek Drive, which is already built with the exception of the sidewalk on the south portion of the property. The property owners have agreed to annex, and again, the proposed plan designation is low density residential for this piece. The area that's proposed for removal from the UGB is in the south of Monmouth Falls City Highway area. It's approximately, or it is 90 acres. It has not been annexed to the city, and 28.4% of the property is within a mapped flood wetland area associated with the South Fork Ash Creek. The existing city plan designation for this area is low density residential, and the proposals is for it to continue to retain its existing county suburban residential zoning. For the council's decision on the legislative amendment to adopt comprehensive plan map designations for the property, there's 4 criteria that the council needs to consider and ensure that their findings showing that all 4 of those criteria can be met. The first criteria is that it meets 1 of 3 standards. There's been a map error, change in conditions, or there's a public need for the land. The second criteria is that it's consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. Third criteria considers whether or not there's adequate public facilities, services, and transportation networks in place or plan to be provided. And then the fourth criteria considers that the designations are appropriate considering the surrounding land uses and the density and pattern of development in the area. There are specific findings for each of these criteria in the staff reports that are attached to the council staff report that's been given this evening. Just to look at some of the highlights of those. The findings show that the proposal can meet criterion 1B with the adoption of House Bill 2647 and the land swap. The existing county comprehensive plan designations are no longer appropriate due to that change condition. The proposal also meets criterion 1C, as there is a need for more vacant residential land inside city limits that can be easily served by public facilities, and it is not overly constrained by environmental resources. In terms of criterion 2, looking at the goals and policies of the Monmouth Comprehensive Plan, the proposed designations are consistent with the city's urbanization, land use, and housing goals and policies. Specifically, the proposed designations will allow for a variety of housing types and densities to be built at a more efficient and cost-effective rate given the proximity they have to existing city services and fewer environmental constraints. Criterion 3 looks at the adequacy of public facilities. Our existing utility master plans plan for a similar number of residential units. because this is a land exchange, not an overall increase in the amount of land being brought in. City utilities and transportation improvements will become available for development or through development, and these costs are borne by the developers of the property. And as I mentioned earlier, through the land use review, development review process, we'll have further opportunities for review and comment to assess those impacts when we have specific development plans available. And then lastly, criterion 4 looks at the compatibility of the surrounding land uses and the density and pattern of development in the area. Area 1 has residential subdivision across the street. There's Sunset Lane. City utilities are stubbed to the property in Mistletoe Road. And part of the property of that Area 1 is actually already inside the urban growth boundary. And it abuts residential land that hasn't yet been annexed inside the city. Area 2 has a residential subdivision built across Ash Creek Drive east, and the street has already been built, as I mentioned. Utilities are available in the street, and part of property, again, is already inside the urban growth boundary. There have been some questions about the adequacy of the public notices provided. So I just wanted to take a moment to review what some of those notices have been sent out. Property owners within 250 feet of the property received mailed notice. There's been notice to the Polk Itemizer Observer. The subject property owners have received a Measure 56 notice. There's been notice provided to the State Department of Land Conservation Development. We've also sent out notice to affected agencies such as the school district and local fire district and our utility providers. The site has also been posted with a sign on the areas proposed for inclusion and for removal. Additional notifications that are not required as part of the Type 4 legislative amendment process included posting agendas on the city website. We've had multiple articles and Monmouth Community Notes newsletter that gets sent out each month. The city manager weekly reports have noted the progress of the House Bill 2647 passage, and also the work sessions on the UGB land swap. Announcements have been made during live stream council meetings, and we've held 2 work sessions at public meetings on November 19th and December 16th. We received a number of written public comments after the council staff report went out, so I just wanted to quickly summarize that we did receive 6 letters in opposition with concerns regarding agricultural farmland, ag land conflicts, property owner right concerns, concerns about the cost impacts of development, procedural issues, and the definition of contiguous. We also received 2 letters in support, and those comments addressed how the proposal will meet the city's or help meet the city's land shortage needs in an environmentally responsible manner, and that the owners understand cost of development will be borne by the developer, and they are committed, the developers in these, or the property owners in this case, are committed to making the land available through annexation. So I just want to say that we do appreciate all the comments that have been received to date and the active citizen involvement and participation in the process. Those comments are very much valued, and they're important concerns to understand. We know that this is not an easy decision, and that there's a lot of factors to balance between agricultural land preservation, environmental growing outside of environmental resource areas, and the need for housing. And so staff has updated the staff recommendation to ask that the council leave the written record open. This will give us more time to carefully consider all of the comment that has been received thus far, and then additional comment that will be received tonight during the oral portion of the public testimony. And it will also give staff a chance to review and provide comments back regarding those issues. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that council may have, unless you wanted to hold comments until after the testimony.
All right, at this time, we will take questions, observations from council. I'll start with Councilor Lopez and then Councilor Obers.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two questions. And Ms. Duffner, thank you very much for the thorough report. My first question has to do with the selection of the sites. How are the three sites, so the single site to be removed and the two sites that are being considered to be added, how are they selected? What did the process of selection look like?
Yeah, so we did a complete analysis around the UGB boundary to see which sites would meet the House bill criteria. Again, looking at what percentage of the sites are constrained by creeks, wetlands, natural resources, looking at whether or not city utilities are available to those sites, looking at willingness of a landowner to actually annex and develop their sites. Are kind of the key considerations that we looked at through that process.
Thank you. So, clarifying question, if I may. My understanding is that that process was largely technical, and then did include some level of direct communication with the landowners of the properties. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so, in summary, those criteria we're looking at, what are the sites that are a low barrier, low cost for development that could be developed in a relatively short time frame, kind of the low hanging fruit, if you will. So once we looked at those sites, the specific properties that can meet those criteria, staff approached the property owners to gauge whether or not they were interested. Since, as we've seen, if we don't have a willing landowner, it kind of defeats the purpose of bringing in more land inside the UGB.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. And then my next question relates to whether or not the specifically the Area 1 is contiguous. You mentioned that it is. I've seen some maps that suggest that there may be a sliver that it may not be. Could you speak to the nature of it being contiguous and how that's established?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll have the attorney weigh in on there if I further clarifications needed. But so I brought up a map to zoom in a little bit. The blue shows the Area 1 parcel boundaries, or the site boundaries. And so the red is inside of the urban growth boundary, like the red shaded area. And then there's a red line around, it's a little bit hard to see, but around Sunset Lane properties where the actual city limits is. So for the intent of the legislation is that we use the annexation definition of contiguous. The right-of-way, mistletoe, the street doesn't separate for purposes of defining whether or not a parcel is contiguous and able to be annexed. So you've got a portion of this parcel, Area 1 is already inside the UGB, and it touches, or it's contiguous by Sunset Lane on that person. I don't know, Justin, if you wanted to clarify that a little bit.
Sure. I think the argument being raised about contiguous assumes that you can't count any part of the same parcel that's already within the UGB. And I think when you're looking at the statute, the text and the intent of the statute, I don't think that is the best reading of it. If you look at the part of this parcel that's already within the UGB there, that does border the city limits. So the textual question is, do you have to rule out any property that overlaps with the UGB? Does that explain the interpretation issue?
Yeah, I think that does help. That component of the parcel partially being in, partially being out is something that I wasn't clear on before.
And effectively, it would also mean that for purposes of the UGB land swap, you basically couldn't include any property that is along any part where the UGB is different than the city limits.
Councillor Oberst?
Just a quick clarification. A number of folks raised concerns over access to this parcel one and specifically the nature of Church Street at this point. Would it be reasonable to assume that a developer would be required to improve Church Street in I'll turn this over to the engineer. Improve Church Street as part of the approval process for a subdivision. I've seen cases in Salem where blocks of rural road have been improved to put a development in down the way. And I'm just wondering, would that apply here as well?
Yeah, absolutely. When they come forward with a defined development plan for that property, we know how many units they're planning. They'll do a traffic impact analysis at that time. That will identify any shortcomings in the existing street and what improvements need to be made to convey that traffic in a safe manner. And we can request as a city, they run that by us and we request they look, like a mile away potentially, depending on what their development plan is. So I think I said earlier in the Planning Commission, I anticipate a lot of improvements to Church Street. I anticipate a lot of improvements to the Church and Stadium intersection due to pedestrian safety from college students and the general public. And again, those costs are all borne by the developer. He's required to pay for those improvements to facilitate his development.
Councillor Ridgway.
Thank you. Going back to Councillor Lopez's question on the selection of the properties, the Stefner, you mentioned that there was a review of the potential properties, and these were the properties that fit the criteria, and they were the easiest fit that we had. Is that to say that there are no other eligible properties, or these are just the best ones in terms of which would be the least costly to develop into housing?
Yeah, I believe these are the best meet the criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carey.
To that point, there aren't very many properties that even come close to meeting the criteria, it seems. And it seems the complicating factor on that is the requirement that it be, contiguous with the city limits. Because that constrains a whole lot of options. And whether they're good options or not, I don't know. Because I've just looked at the map and I can see there's only a few spaces that meet the definition, much less suitability. So but we're saddled with, the 2647, the language in that, I suppose. So hands are a bit tied on that. At least that strikes me, and you don't have to comment on that. That's just my own observation, unless you'd like to.
I think that's correct. And then just again, emphasizing how the connection to city utilities, how critical that is, because those costs are borne by development. And so if you have intervening parcels, it just makes it that much more costly and unlikely that they'll develop until the adjacent pieces, bring the utilities to and through their properties.
So the assumption is then the utilities go to the city limits. Is that correct?
Not technically right now, they're not stubbed to the city limits, but the existing utilities have been constructed to a sufficient size and depth to incorporate that additional area.
Good. Okay, good. One of the things, and it hit me right away, and I meant to, I'll forget it if I don't mention it now. The 250-foot notice requirement that is and will be, or something similar to that will be, should this go through, will be required in subsequent considerations. I'd suggest that we take a look at that. 250 means one thing in town. If you're in the country, 250 feet doesn't mean much. And I think that you could And I know you've got a software that does that and all that, but in this instance, why don't us look at who owns property a mile out, maybe even a mile and a half out, Mistletoe Road, and include them in the notification going forward. That was not the requirement this time. I would like to think about doing that as a courtesy to engage our community as we're trying to do in the future. One thing that I would add to your sort of chronology of how we got to this point, remember we've got a population study that was done and released by Portland State University Population Center, which provides population information for the entire state of Oregon. And that's the one that got us, historically goes back a ways. That's what got us into the housing needs analysis. Then we've got a problem, let's fix that. Here's our strategy and some of the strategies that come out of that. So there was some impetus to that. It wasn't just say, let's do something, because it seems like there isn't any. I mean, there was a population projection that was, we need to be conscious of. And I would, again, Susan, I don't mean to jump over you, but for those in the audience that would like to drill down on some of this stuff, on our city website, our comprehensive plan, this housing needs analysis that we have talked about, the housing production strategy, there are tabs on our city website that you can go and get detail on that. And typically it would fall under the community development page. So, if you're not real conversant on how to move around on that, that's easy enough to find, and somebody could help you if that was necessary. Okay, now more to the substance. We currently have, as we sit, to the southwest, we got 90 acres that is zoned as, and that's a county zoning of residential. Is that right?
Suburban residential, and yes, it is a county zoning.
Suburban residential. So if that property owner were to decide that they would like to annex all 90 acres to the city, and if we could meet the requirements, we could bring in 90 acres and begin developing 90 acres of residential property. Is that correct? I mean, after you minus out the wetlands and all that jazz.
Yeah, I think so technically it's eligible for annexation because it's contiguous with the city limits. The practicalities and the likelihood of that property coming to in for development is very low because of the creek going through the middle of that 90 acres. It really cuts up what is buildable there. We don't have a lot of the city utilities haven't been sized or extended there, and David can talk more towards that. And then just some of the traffic concerns associated with that sharp kind of hairpin turn as you're coming into town there. There's some concerns with that and with some of the slope on the property. So I think when the urban growth boundary was first laid out 50 years ago in the late 70s, it made up for a nice, even shaped UGB boundary. But as we've come to understand more about development, and there've been increasing environmental restrictions placed on growth and development, this is really, it's questionable today if we would, most likely would not include that area inside of our UGB just because of those issues and the challenges associated with that. And I don't know if you want to comment anymore, David, about utilities to that area.
No, yeah, there would be some utilities available for a portion of it, but across the creek, obviously, elevation changes and getting across, getting back to some of the natural resource impacts, doing those stream crossings is not a simple process anymore these days. Nothing around wetlands or natural resources is a simple process anymore these days.
But as we speak, as we look at the at this swap, we're dealing 90 acres of, in gross acres of developable land. Now, there's constraints on it that has parking problems, that has, or traffic issues rather, that would be in farmland, that would be turned into residential, some portion of that. So it's not like, I guess what I'm trying to equate is that we're going to have 90 acres go out, 70 acres come in if this works. And, but it's not like this is all brand new. I mean, we've got, the 70 acres isn't brand spanking new to us. It may be more easily developed than the 90, but the 90 exists, and with the problems that go along with that. So I think as we look at this, that we have to be conscious that there's trade-offs all the way, and we'll see how it comes out. That's it for me right now. I'll probably have some more, but thank you.
Just clarifying, it's 75 coming in, not 70, right? So, yeah. Councillor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kind of on the line of what Councillor Carey was talking about in having more homes from the strategic plan that we have. I mean, we could just have no more homes, right? So why is it important that we're building more homes in Monmouth? Besides, it would bring a population increase, but I think there's people that would say, no, the size of the town is just fine the way it is. Is there an economic reason why we should be looking at putting more homes in our town?
Yeah, it's a great question. Why do cities grow? Larger question, but yeah, so I think, definitely there are economic impacts. I mean, you're seeing impacts to real estate and jobs that are focused in those areas. Construction certainly, and construction jobs tend to be the higher paying jobs as well. So yeah, I think there's economic impacts. There's challenges with people that work in our community that may want to find housing and live here so that they're not adding to the traffic commuting patterns and congestion. And if they don't have suitable housing available to meet their needs, they're going to go to another community. And I have heard firsthand university professors that say, I would love to live in Monmouth. I can't find housing. I can't find housing that I can afford. So that was kind of a wake up call to me to hear about that. And, I think it's not just, the university professors, it's an overall your workforce supply. And if you don't have housing for them, then it makes it more challenging to do economic development and have jobs be able to locate here as well. I think there's issues that you'll run into if you're a no growth community with your taxes and your fees, as there's fewer users to share those costs, but the costs keep going up, so that there's a challenge there certainly as well. And then I think just a fairness and an equity issue for if you're a community that has shut its doors and people want some place for their kids that grow up in Monmouth or go to university here that want to stay here. It's not necessarily saying we're anti-growth, but I think communities that can plan for and manage their growth smartly so that it's done in the most cost-effective way and still trying to preserve the specialness, the things that make your community great. And so I appreciate Councillor Carey's comments earlier about the city's housing needs. When I say this is how many units we're supposed to be producing, that all goes back to our population forecast that Portland State does for us every 3 years. And we don't have like a very fast, rapid growing population growth rate that's based on. It's a very moderate growth of 1 to 1.5% average annual growth rate. So I think that's the policy choice and of making sure that you're not growing so fast that you can't keep up with utilities and, that the overcrowding issues and service issues. And so Monmouth, through its very careful, diligent planning, is taking all of that into consideration to make sure that those utilities and services are right sized for that. So sorry, that was a really long answer, but it's a big question too.
Councillor Carey.
Well, just to add on to that very quickly so we can move on, but one of the reasons, and building houses is one thing, but having land to build them, if we don't have any available land, the price of the existing lands go up, not only in rent, but in sale price and, and everything else. One of the people will tell you that one of the reasons that Portland is so expensive is they're so constrained by the urban growth boundary in the city of Portland that there's nowhere to build inside. And so, the rates go up, the rents go up, the price of housing generally goes up because there just is a dearth of that. So that's why, if we can increase our housing, arguably, then that would keep prices at a more moderate level.
Councillor McKeel.
So I want to actually go back to your point about having additional houses increases the tax base. So as we are facing tighter and tighter budgets, to me, it makes sense that we'd want to, as you were talking about, have that delicate balance of bringing in more homes that would increase the taxes that come into the city to provide more resources for the services that we're trying to provide in our city. Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm not a Measure 550 expert on the Oregon tax system, but yeah, if cities are not having some growth to them, then those costs of those increasing services have to go somewhere, and that's on your existing ratepayer and existing residents. So it's kind of a function of our the way our tax system is structured in Oregon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as we've said, the 90 acres was technically there to be developed eventually. That's what an urban growth boundary was designed as. But it would have been more expensive. We wouldn't be talking about folks being able to afford it had we been able to develop, and we wouldn't have been able to develop the 90 acres. So this much more developable land is what we call smart growth. And in Oregon, we are expected to provide land for growth. That's the state mandate to us as a city. So making sure that is smartly done is helpful and important, because we know lots of other cities, not just Portland, that aren't doing that right now. So, Councillor Ridgway, you had something?
So we've been talking about growth and smart growth, making sure that we have developable land for that. And I'm just wondering, and this is a little bit off topic, but I think relevant to the conversation. Are there projects that we currently know about that are that we've slated for future building? I know that there's a apartment complex that is currently under construction off of Riddle Road. There's some land kind of adjoining the Edwards Addition that is vacant right now, but slated for some improvements. Can you speak to current plans and acreage available for soon to come developments?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Thanks for that question. So we do have additional units at the Riddle Road multifamily site just north of town that are continuing to build out, that have been approved. The Edwards Addition are small phases, so those are coming in somewhere between 12 to 17 or 15 at a time, and they're certainly at the higher end, I guess I would say, of the price point of the market, not considered affordable to most in that area. We've had a couple of pre-applications conference. Those are kind of the pre-application development stage where folks come in and start to understand what are the costs of their development, and they make that decision of whether or not they want to move forward on those. And they're in areas that are starting to get into those creek wetland areas that we're talking about. And there's a long entitlement process of trying to go through and get the permits for that often takes multiple years. And so, I think that's what we're trying to address, is instead of being like we have been in the last 10, 15 years in a reaction mode of being a little bit more proactive, knowing that even these lands coming in through the UGB swap, they're also going to take multiple years to get ready for development as well. So just trying to kind of keep more of a steady supply available for that to meet those needs.
Yeah, I think also interesting to note, we've done infill, right? We have apartments downtown. We've worked in various things, the cottage cluster that's being developed. So doing everything we can. And one of our other goals in that housing production strategy was to encourage home ownership. Building a bunch of apartments, it doesn't encourage folks who are going to then build generational wealth. So that is a priority, and being able to provide some more medium density, as opposed, like you say, potentially the Edwards Edition homes would be something we would be giving to future generations, even though it's a tough decision in our community and with the land surrounding us. Councilor Opers?
Two quick questions, Suzanne. One is more check my recollection. As I recall, the property north of Gentle Woods, which has been annexed to the city, is about 50% constrained by wetlands, and the overall acreage of that area, is that pretty close?
Yeah, I mean, there's two parcels there. So if you consider both of those together, yes. And there's a conservation easement that surrounds Middle Fork of Ash Creek there as well. So yeah, I'd say roughly around half of that. Mm-hmm.
So that's just sort of indicative of the challenges faced. So I buy 100 acres and it turns out I can only develop 45, 50, 55 of those acres. That's tough. Okay. The other one I wondered, we've read in the comments that we've received concerns about encroaching on farmland. And earlier, I think you said we're pretty well surrounded by it. Are there any parcels that you're aware of that are, would meet the criteria of urban growth boundary city limits that are not farmland? So no matter where we go, unless we want to move independent somehow, no matter where we go, we're going to be going into farmland. Even that 90 acres is farmland.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
All right. Seeing no additional questions, we'll excuse staff for now. We'll bring them back if we have additional questions, but we will open for public testimony. And at this time, again, I'm going to prioritize folks who have not submitted prior written testimony or spoken to us. And so, but I hope to give each of you 3 minutes to speak. We will have a timer. Can you see the timer? I can't see it, but you can see it from, oh, there it is right out front. So that will be a timer to kind of keep an eye on, to know that we will be calling time at the end of 3 minutes. And a reminder that you will be able to submit whatever written testimony you want after this meeting through next Tuesday. So first of all, we'd like to hear from Eileen Smith. And Eileen, if you want to come up and you'll push the button there, and when the red light is on, the microphone is on, take a seat.
Evening, Mayor.
And go ahead and speak into the microphone so folks can hear. Thank you.
I'm Eileen.
Your name and street.
I'm Eileen Smith, and I live at 10501 Mistletoe, and that puts me right next to the urban growth boundary property that's being discussed tonight. I just wanted to register my objection to it, just while I can. It will affect me, definitely. It will affect me and a farmer that works my land. And the traffic will definitely, and I noticed you addressed that earlier. It takes 70 acres out of the urban, or out of the good farming land. And that is an objection that I have. Then, and considering the people who buy there and build houses there, they really need to know that they're building right next to farmland. And I hope there is, a footage or so that there would be a boundary between, because there's a lot of dust that comes with farming, a lot of noise in the middle of the night at times. There is spraying that goes on, and it does affect plants at times. The farmers do what they can, but there ought to be a real boundary between that. And I know that people will complain because of the dust and all of that goes along with farming. And that's all I had to say. I just wanted to tell you I'm around.
No, that's great.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. And if you just want to hit the button, thank you very much, Ms. Smith, for coming.
Thank you.
I will call Priscilla Kim. Priscilla.
Can you hear me? I want to make sure that man in the back can, because we talked earlier. So there were a lot of things I heard tonight.
Can we
and
just, for the record, your name and
Priscilla Kennan, and what else?
street where you live? The street where you live.
Orchard.
Thanks.
I just want to make sure the time hadn't started yet till I start talking. Can I start now, Phyllis? I've already given a minute of my name. So a couple of things. All of this just seems to really reek of underhandedness. I did try to reach out to Representative Evans to talk about the House bill, and he was constantly unavailable. And I asked him to attend tonight. He was unavailable. That being said, that's that. Also, I noticed on the Planning Commission, and I don't know who keeps track of that, but 2 people on it are dead. And I'd like to put my hand up and say, I'll get on the Planning Commission if that helps. Well, you've got people on the clinic that aren't here anymore on this earth. That's also. I also wanted to make a comment about the housing production strategies key stakeholders. The people that are on there are the Mistletoe owners, the Warming Shelter Outreach, the Homeless Shelter Program Manager, the Willamette Valley Alliance for the Homeless. All these are, does anybody see a notice here of the stakeholders? Nowhere on here where there are people from the city, people that live in this city or work in this town. It's strictly trying to help the homeless. And what about, and then also I didn't see the word affordable in any of the documentation, but I also heard Suzanne Defner mention affordable one time. That's those 360 to 830 units that are looking to be built out there on Mistletoe Road. No one has said that those are going to be affordable. They're going to be multi-level and medium. And this is the other thing. You have this land that is agriculture land, and you want to convert it to medium density land or units. But the property that you showed on the other side of Ash Creek, that is low density because there's already houses there. So now you have the ability to go, oh, let's ride the rail and put the number of homes out on Mistletoe, that's farmland, to medium density. So you're going to put triplexes out there, duplexes out there, cottages out there, and a creek running right through the middle of it. Some of this just doesn't make sense. I can't get it. But then also you talk about the need for housing. Look at what you've built on Eccles, Riddle Road, Warren, and count the number of hundreds of apartment buildings that are there. Look at the number of companies that have left. Woo is down. Marquee built the spa, they're gone. Forest River is gone. The gas station on the corner of 76, that's gone. So we have one gas station in town. You talk about the severe need for housing, and I don't see it. I do not see it. This is a sleeper community, and look at all the condos that have been built down in Independence. It just doesn't make sense to put all this here, and
Right.
that's what it is.
Time. Thank you very much, Priscilla. Don McCarthy. This handout will be included in the packet that we'll be receiving later as well. So thank you. All right. Yep. Thanks. Your name and street where you live.
Don McCarthy, 4920 Matney Road, Monmouth. Since I'm on the clock, I wish to get right to the point. There's 3 maps I'd like you to refer to as I give my talk or handouts. One map was prepared by the city, and the other one is one I obtained from a government agency. Both maps are representing the piece of property involved. Clearly, this map does a much better job of showing the property involved. The one the city used left the east side is left blank for some reason. Now, councilmen and women, trust your eyes when you view this map. All 4 sides of this property are actually being farmed. You will be creating an island of farmland. In fairness, in the southeast corner, lower right, there's a connection to a development. It is so small that without me pointing it out, you would not even know it was there. It represents less than 1.5% of the perimeter. Now look at number 4 on your criteria. This must be met to approve this swap and explain how any fair, unbiased person can look at the more detailed map and say we are meeting the standard of number 4. If you ignore number 4, the surrounding land will cause an immediate conflict with land use. Nothing the ag community does that upsets the public more than the application of farm chemicals. This will be happening on all 4 sides. I have firsthand knowledge of this as I have personally been accused of making people sick and destroying their gardens with the legal application of farm chemicals. Why do you want to contribute to this inevitable conflict to add a mere 5 acres? And I achieved that 5 acres by taking the 90 acres, taking away the 28% that you say is not buildable. And you'll get a net gain of 5 acres. Our federal government policies promote, encourage division and hate. Monmouth do not stoop to this level. Rise above this. There's no shame in admitting you have made a mistake.
All right. Thank you, Doug.
That my time's up.
That was your 3 minutes.
I could go on more, but
We'll quit.
Please do. I know you've submitted some written testimony, so please continue to submit written testimony for the record. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll have you turn off your microphone. And as you gather things together, we'll call David Pastor to the front.
Before we start that, could Ms. Duffner portray on the screen page 22 in the packet she had? And while she's doing that, do the members, thank you. Do the members of the city council have the record of survey that is from 2004 for Monmouth Christian Church?
Would have been exhibit 7 to the letter I submitted, being law. That sounds okay.
It hasn't been, you don't have that yet. I have extra copies I can give you today.
This was something, right, that was included in the packet that was on our desk this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Duffner. It might be good just to offer this. In Nixon's impeachment, there was a congressman that said, "My mind is made up. Don't confuse me with the facts." He probably, it was a man, I have to admit. And if you're a Republican, you think he was a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, you think he was a Republican. My request is, council members, please look at the facts. And it's difficult to look at the facts when there's so many emotions involved, but I try to do that too. Absence of contiguity. It's a good Scrabble word, contiguity. It means contiguous, touching. If you look at the map that I ask you, and I can show you here for the audience. Here's my, I don't use this right there. There we go. Oh, it doesn't allow it to project on the screen. Interesting. I wonder why. I don't know the technology of that. But if you look at that map, on the bottom left portion of the picture, there is the housing development. And one of the confusions is there's a flag lot. I can't even point to it. That's strange. But if you go down right there, that is already in the urban growth boundary, and it is contiguous to the city. But you cannot swap things that are already in the city, that are already in the urban growth boundary. This is swapping property that is not in the urban growth boundary, and the city map shows that. The attorney will give you more legal things on that. I'm trying to read that. Does that mean I have 7 seconds left? How much do I have? 1 minute? 1 minute, okay, thank you. We really need to address the freedom of speech. The staff spoke for 50 minutes, Mayor, and you're giving us 3. If I go to Taco Bell, they get 4 minutes to make a burrito. And you're giving me less time than that to make a very complicated presentation. Please give us more opportunity to speak. There was no notification to Mr. John Moore, a veteran. His property has more than 500 feet contiguous to the western boundary. That was terrible. He has not yet received a letter from the city nor an apology for the lack of that. Traffic flow problems have been discussed. There's not a documented need for housing. Wetland concerns. I live in that area and I walk in that field. And in the spring, I cannot walk because it is mucky and it is wet. And the wetland considerations at 0.7% are grossly underestimated. It's going to be much greater than that. I want to end with an Abraham Lincoln quote. May I do that? It was President's Day. Thank you. Abraham Lincoln said, nearly all men, we should say women, can stand adversity. But if you want to test a man's character, give him or her power.
All right.
Thank you.
And Joan Bostrom.
Joan Bostrom, 14920 Ferns Corner Road, Monmouth, Oregon, 97361. Comprehensive plan map illuminates the proposed parcel 1 land swap as an island consisting of crowded dwellings, totally surrounded on all sides by agriculture zoned exclusive farm use. John Moore's property, barn, approximately 200 fruit trees, and vineyard is the only adjacent residence. The picture of a true rural setting. Owls, hawks, bald eagles live or visit there. By the way, his tractor sinks in the ground except for in the summer. How are multi-story apartment townhouses with accompanying noise pollution compatible land use? A city word, compatible. And I wonder, why are these properties going to be so much cheaper than anywhere else that you can develop? Obviously, there is no consistency with the country life of nearby homes and farms. Obviously, this does not fit either density or pattern of the existing area. Requirements for the swap: 1, consistency; 2, density; 3, pattern to fit into the existing neighborhood. Monmouth is 2.24 square miles, or 1,436.6 acres. Add 80 net, no, not net, real acres, 1,513.6 city-size acres. In other words, this parcel 1 is only 4.673% of Monmouth's size, at 2.9 people per dwelling in Monmouth per census websites, times this 840 proposed buildings. This equals almost 2,500 potential new residents on less than 5% of the city. 20% crammed into 5%. This is total destruction of a rural city like Monmouth is. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Nick Roten. Name and street, residence.
Hi, can you hear me now? So my name is Nick Roten. I'm an attorney at Matheny Law. For the record, the address is 1644 Liberty Street, Southeast Salem, Oregon. I represent Mr. David Pastor, who's taken a leading role in advocating for a variety of people in his neighborhood. And he submitted written testimony in addition to his oral testimony, and he's got a variety of issues and concern, as do a lot of citizens here today. I'm going to talk about a very specific issue that it looks like you guys have tuned in on and read some of your materials in advance, which I appreciate. The state law, House Bill 2647, and has a couple different threshold requirements in order to legally qualify to do this UGB swap. The one that we contend is clearly not satisfied is the legal requirement that the land, the site to be added into the UGB has to be contiguous with the city boundaries and the urban growth boundaries. So I have some materials and maps for you. One is the official city boundary map for Monmouth. There is a portion of land which the city contends is contiguous. That is relying on land which is already in the UGB. So when Mr. Pastor was saying there's land, it's the Mistletoe Estates subdivision. That property, as you can see from the maps that I've submitted, to the extent that the city claims it's contiguous to the north, number one, there's a road that separates it, and that breaks what is contiguous under law. I can discuss that in a little bit. And then to the west, you can see that the property, the city boundaries are not contiguous with the Area 1. I apologize, I'm kind of trying to go rapid fire, so it's kind of hard to do this. But I would just say, so there is case law that says to be contiguous, you have to actually touch. So what that means is that northwest corner of the Mistletoe Estates where the city boundaries is, it has to actually touch Area 1, which is the site outside of the UGB, the site to be added in. And yes, it is correct that you do have to rule out property that doesn't touch. So because of the presence of the road, that makes it non-contiguous. It doesn't touch. I understand the intent was to adopt the annexation definition of contiguous. I cite to that in footnote 2. The Oregon legislature actually, in that instance, broadened what is contiguous to say public roads don't qualify. So under that own definition, it doesn't meet the standard. I used to work in the legislature, legislative council. They had a lot of things going on. I think somebody just dropped the ball if that was the intent. So I would say it just simply doesn't meet the legal standard as written. You can't insert what's omitted. I could go on and on and on. But I think this is a simple legal question. It could get tied up in the courts in a variety of ways. Mr. Pastor isn't going to give up.
Thank you, sir. And your materials be added.
Yes, and I will submit supplemental briefing if it's helpful on the legal statutory interpretation.
Thanks.
Is pretty clear. So.
And our last comment from Brian Sparks. Brian Sparks, our last commenter this evening.
Mayor Coons, there's also someone online.
I'm sorry. Yeah. And we have one more online after that. It was on. It was left on. Thanks, Brian.
My name is Brian Sparks. I live at 790 College Street South here in Monmouth. I've submitted written testimony and including my speaking notes, but it appears I owe you an apology. Apparently I was mistaken in listening to your commentary at your 1216 work session on of 2025 on this legislative amendment in the House bill. I was under the impression from your comments that the city was open to a modified proposal and an open process to implementing the UGB swap law. As a local property owner, I was encouraged that my pending development proposal for 45 lots could be increased to 60 lots or more. I assured you that I would speak to city staff and discuss the potential resolution of the longstanding 1986 and 2013 UGB boundary issue on my development property and follow up with a presentation to planning at their public hearing. I did those things. What I found was a wholesale assault by city staff on my tax lot 705 property and to my proposal to add 2 or more acres contiguous to the UGB and the city limits. It included false and written and verbal statements and denial of my rights under MC 1810-0604 and 6 to effectively speak and rebut the false or misleading testimony or testimony by others parties in support or opposition to this proposal. This occurred both on 1/21/2026 and the continuation hearing at planning on 2/4/2026. There were no written description of procedures made available before the public hearing to carry out 1810-0604, and I've since filed an appeal of the Planning Commission action, and I hope to speak with you on that topic at that hearing. If city staff had followed the provisions, as I previously indicated, of OAR 660-24-065 in the Planning Commission process, where we would actually have some objective criteria for the selection of these parcels to be included, I may not have liked the outcome, but I would have respected the process. I find the process where city staff pick winners and losers in property development without objectively considering all properties around the city distasteful. As a local property investor and community member for 30+ years, I have developed or assisted in the development of 50+ residential lots over 30 years. The process the city has taken is a major disappointment. Tonight, I wish to again propose a modified motion consistent with our December work session discussion and my input to the Planning Commission for your consideration. You have that modified motion in front of you. It's slightly different than the proposal that I had made to Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you for your well-timed speech there, 3 minutes. All right, Phyllis, if you have someone as a panelist and we can get a name and residence. I'm not sure that 3-minute timer will be loud enough to be heard online, but hopefully.
Yes, good evening, council members. Can you hear me? I heard not. I think I saw no. You can hear me. Yes. So
yeah, we had you there, but we can't hear now. Trying to make sure we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me? All right. Thank you. So my name is Dan Wade, and my brother Rob Wade is here tonight as well online. And we are the owners of Mistletoe Road property, designated as Area 1. And we want to register our full support of the legislative amendment 2502 for the UGB land exchange in accordance with House Bill 2647. Our families own the property for multiple generations, and we're proud of the fact that the land has contributed to the Monmouth farming community over many decades. And we understand that the state of Oregon has recently adopted House Bill 2647 in recognition of Monmouth's extremely limited and environmentally constrained residential land supply inside city limits, and the need to annex additional buildable land to meet the city's forecasting housing needs. Now, our property is a large and regularly shaped parcel with only a small percentage of mapped wetlands, which makes it ideal for efficient and environmentally conscious development. And in fact, we've had a local consultant recently do a detailed mapping of the wetlands that the state is reviewing currently. we, like our parents and grandparents before us, value the opportunity for the land to be used for affordable housing of medium density, as has been discussed tonight, to benefit the broader community, and are committed to the annexation process required for development to occur in a responsible and timely manner. And we appreciate all the feedback from the community, and we're certainly hearing the community's concerns, and we're very committed to responsibly addressing the applicable City of Monmouth, Polk County, State of Oregon, and federal requirements in a responsible manner. For example, we've hired a local environmental firm to do the detailed wetland delineation. We understand the future development will be required to comply with a traffic impact analysis, and that development can't take place until any impacts from that study have been addressed. And we also understand that the development will be responsible for the cost.
You just froze.
Improvements in preparation for future. Just want to thank you for the opportunity to voice our support tonight, which will provide a viable path to support Monmouth's housing needs. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will in fact close or pause our hearing. We will, I will announce a hearing continuance. This hearing will continue. We will accept public testimony through Tuesday, February 24th at 5 p.m. Please address any comments to Suzanne Deffner at the city rather than to council, so that becomes part of the public record. At this time, then, we will continue the hearing. We anticipate that the next noticed hearing will actually be our city council meeting of March 17th. So that would be the time that we would continue to read the additional testimony that's been gathered and continue our questions for our staff. So this hearing will be continued in the future. At that, we are ready to continue with our agenda. And so I'll invite folks to stay if you like, but if not, we'll give you a second to exit before we continue. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance this evening. And the hearing loop, Saber will gather out back. All right, we will close the back doors and continue with our additional business item, which is our agreement with WANRAC. for the Central School District 13J dedicated network that we heard about last week. As Rochelle and David fight over who's going to present the staff report on this.
Thank you, Nan. So I'll just provide the background. At the February 3rd City Council meeting, Jennifer Kubista, the superintendent for Central School District, was hearing and presented to the council. During that, Councilor Lopez requested what the projected revenue would be. And so Jennifer, to get that back to David and I, basically the franchise fee, which is 5%, would be based off what Minnet is going to charge them, which is $2,000. So the city would receive about $100 per month or $1,200 per year in franchise fees based on this. So I wanted to provide that. I don't believe we have any other questions. Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
No.
I don't. So.
No, I believe that was the outstanding question we had regarding the franchise agreement. There hasn't been any other revisions or any other changes or anything like that.
All right. Any additional questions, Councilor Carey?
I didn't understand. She said there'd be no impact on MyNet, but yet they're going to have are they going to maintain the normal MyNet accounts, but then deal with internal things? I was a little unclear on that.
Yeah, MyNet's the provider, but the equipment and all the installation is Wanrac that's doing all that. And Wanrac still owns all of the equipment and leases it to the school district. I have that. It's about $3,800 a month for leasing all of the equipment, but it's mainly to create that isolated network for security.
Councilor Lopez.
Madam Mayor, would you entertain a motion? He moves second reading and adoption of ordinance 1421, an ordinance granting to Wanrac LLC a non-exclusive franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a fiber optic system within the city for provision of services to the Central School District 13J.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Lopez, for the motion and Councilor Ridgway for the second. Any additional questions? Councilor Lopez.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak to the motion. Thank you very much for the additional digging and additional detail on how the city will interact with this step that the school district is taking. I appreciate the extra time and am happy to make this motion tonight. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, Phyllis, for the roll call, please.
Councilor Ridgway.
Aye.
Councilor McKeel.
Yes.
Councilor Carey.
Aye.
Councilor Lopez.
Aye.
Councilor Oberst.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We will adopt ordinance number 1421. Thank you very much for that. That brings us to our reports section of our agenda. And this evening, I'm going to start off with information that I like to present annually about the Monmouth Independence Community Foundation's account for the Monmouth Bicentennial. Again, just because someday I'll be gone and I won't be repeating this, and I have to keep you younger people in the loop here. After Monmouth's sesquicentennial, former resident Scott MacArthur donated $2,056 to the Monmouth Independence Community Foundation for an endowment fund, and hoping that by 2056,
I was wondering if that was.
it's significant because in the year 2056, Monmouth will be celebrating its bicentennial. That $2,056 has been invested, as the Community Foundation does for a variety of groups in our community. And after earnings of an additional almost half, $1,249.53 this year. That balance is now at $9,383.69. Contributions are welcome to the fund, but Scott's goal of being able to provide us with some money for a big bicentennial celebration. That is my report on that. So I will also, well, I don't have my Minnet report with me, so we'll go on to other boards and commissions. No, Councilor Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief. The Homeless Alliance met on the 12th of this month at 3 p.m. At the Salem Commissioners Chambers there, or the Marion County Commissioners Chambers rather, in Salem. And the nature of this meeting was largely technical. Moving into the new year, a lot of letters of support for different entities themselves requesting support for granting with other organizations. There was one item that was largely discussed during this meeting, and that meeting will continue. That item will continue to be addressed in the continuation of the meeting, likely later this week or potentially next week, relating to the ORI, Oregon Rehousing Initiative funding flowing into the community. So more to report back then. A lot of robust discussion about how we should engage in this initiative. Thank you.
No other meetings. All right. That takes us to our city manager's report, Rochelle Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. It was mentioned earlier, but I just wanted to confirm that on Thursday, we have an expert coming in that's going to take a look at the acoustics in this room. So we're going to start that process and go from there. You're very welcome. Let's see. Parks and Rec grant applications are open until April 1st. So please share with your friends who would be interested in hosting a recreational activity in Monmouth this year. A new episode of Monmouth Monthly is up and available wherever you listen to podcasts. This episode features Nikita Vincent and Arabio Valadares. Okay. Two farmers who talk about the Cultural Harvest Farmers Collective. And then join us tomorrow night for an evening of abundance at the Monmouth Senior Community Center. This is another program in celebration of Black History Month. Get some gumbo and learn about this culinary legacy and the women who brought it to life. The event begins at 6 p.m. And I think you can probably tell that Sabra helped me with those 3 bullet points. I also wanted to give an update that the 2 trolley bus shelters by the Ross Crossing, the plans were submitted, and so those have come in-house. So that's going to go back, and hopefully those are going to start with the installation soon. But those were a little bit more. I know, aren't you excited? Yeah. And then I have one question for council. I recently had a city manager tell me that when they get a question from one councilor, when they respond and they'll blind copy, but they'll send it to the whole council. And they have found that has been very helpful, that it then, because sometimes councilors will have the same questions maybe, it may spur other questions. And if I do that in a way where I blind copy, then you can't reply all. I thought it was a great idea, and I thought I would ask you if you thought that also was a great idea, and if that's the case, then that's what we'll do going forward. Okay.
Can I look at serial meeting issues with that?
Yeah. Okay.
Because before we decide something like that, I mean, serial meeting's a complicated issue, and I want to double check on that before we make that a policy.
That sounds good. Okay. No, I knew. Isn't that good? So yeah, so that's all I have.
So actually, I didn't report on, I attended the League of Oregon Cities President's Regional Meeting last week, and I know you attended. Did others attend during the day on that? So the League was asking some really interesting questions about how to best represent a very diverse membership. And so they are gathering this information from folks all over the state, but really and truly, I mean, things like if there is a legislative proposal, for example, that is generally positive for most of members, but is greatly disadvantages one member city or a small number of member cities, should the league take a stance or not? And so really interesting questions about how they are going to go forward and develop policies, develop legislative agreements and stances. And I assume they may be gathering more information on that later. They're going to go through really a 1.5 year long process of reviewing a document called their municipal policy manual. And so if you get emails from the league about those things, I encourage you to take a look. So it's really kind of an interesting look at how they represent us. Yeah. Councilor Obert.
Just a quick comment on that. I was the chair of the Transportation Policy Committee at LOC at one point, and LOC was proposing to increase the amount of money in the so-called small city allotment, which was money set aside for small cities, and I mean really small cities, we wouldn't qualify, to be able to do some street projects. And the sum total of that fund at that point was, I think, $2 million, which wouldn't resurface half a block of a street anymore, right? And they were proposing to up it to $5 million. Well, that money was going to come out of the general allotment to cities, which meant that the big cities were going to take a hit. Now, I suspect that if you looked at a Eugene or a Portland, that their portion of the added $3-4 million would have been almost nothing, but yet they objected to this plan. And so this is a case where you're trying to help one group of cities, the really, really small, and it comes at the expense of the really, really big. And how do you balance those two? So that's an example of the kind of thing I think that they're talking about of, you know, how do you balance that? Do you leave the small cities totally bereft of any help at all from the state in doing street projects, or do you push ahead and maybe hurt a little bit the bigger cities? So yeah.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. All right, with that, then we will entertain any council comments or announcements of events that we haven't already discussed. Councilor Carey.
Just a question and clarification. Justin, are there any, because we paused this hearing, are there any restrictions that council ought to have in terms of contact with staff in particular?
So I don't think, now my mind's on serial meetings law, but I think that, so generally, as a general rule, contact with staff is not an ex-party contact, even if that was an issue here, which I'm not sure it would be, since this is, I think, a legislative process. I guess, I don't know if we talked about it. There's a chance for more written testimony. Staff, I think, plans to respond or follow up on things anyway before the March 17th hearing. Is the question, are you thinking about communications like, can you follow up on this issue, or kind of more substantive questions, I guess? If it's substantive questioning of staff, I think it's best if that happens in the public meeting. Does that answer your question?
Sure. I'm more of mind to seek clarification on something that's either in the, in the staff report or in the testimony that Suzanne or perhaps David gave today.
Is there going to be more staff testimony at the March 17th hearing?
Yeah, we'll have a staff report
to
go back and recap where we are. And she's mentioned that they are taking input and feedback. That's why we're delaying the hearing, so we will hear any additional findings or advice that they've gotten.
Yeah, so I think abundance of caution, it's probably best to try to have the conversation as part of the public meeting. That would be my advice.
Could we say, if we have additional questions, rather than have the conversation, let her know?
Yes.
So they're ready to address them. So if you have anything specific after this, but don't engage in the back and forth, perhaps?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sounds like a party out there. All right. Any other announcements or comments? I'll take a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you very much for your attendance this evening.